Hello and welcome back, guys and girls. How is it going? My name is Alexander, also known as Andreyevits, and today I want to talk about important subjects which is worth to highlight in my opinion. First and foremost, when you should be visiting and clearing some optional areas in main campaign, as well as pointing out their difficulty curve, because some of those zones are intertwined and contain several areas for you to explore and complete a quest there. I will put a strong emphasis on the word optional, despite granting you an extra skill point, devotion point, attribute point, or lore notes. They will require from you to have good concentration on such aspects of the game like map awareness, positioning of your characters and monsters, microcontrol, etc. With that said, you should visit some of those in certain order, especially if it is your first time playing through the game. The second thing that I'm going to mention is few useful tips and tricks that are going to improve your gameplay whenever you are trying to play as a quote-unquote squishy caster. In this particular example, I'm going to show my Conjurer playstyle as well as compare him to another type of melee caster called a Death Knight, with whom I played previously. I will mention not only general advantages and disadvantages, but I will additionally specify certain parameters that you wish to preferably have if you want to play as effectively as possible. As a reminder, I would like to emphasize that this is my subjective opinion, and you are free to disagree with everything that I am going to mention here. However, like one video game character used to say, there is no knowledge, that is no power. On that note, let's talk about optional areas in the main campaign. The first optional area that you are most likely wish to visit is named Depraved Sanctuary. In order to enter here, you need to find a key, which can be obtained either from cultists near the entrance, or from NPC from Devil's Crossing, once you will collect a lore note. I will mention from the get-go that you need at least some vitality damage resistance, plus some chaos resistance if you want to complete this zone and not turn it into quote-unquote corpse runs. With that said, even if you have those defensive parameters, the boss of this place will still give you a hard time, especially if your ability to dodge nasty area of effect spells is not optimal yet. You can apply an old trick from other ARPGs and rely mostly on your healing pot in this place. Before engaging in a fight, open up a personal rift that leads to town beforehand. This way, when your healing potion is on cooldown, you can go back in town and wait for it to recharge. There is a downside, you do have to quickly click on a town icon to teleport back, but it's still an option. Generally speaking, you will have a better chance of clearing this area right after you will defeat Warden Creek. Before it, I will not recommend you enter there. And one more thing that should persuade you from entering this place at quote-unquote early stages is the fact that you can get unlucky and you might face against several elite demons before you reach the boss himself. If this will happen to you, then my only advice would be to kite them and reserve to hit and run technique, or better yet, return to this area later. The second optional area that you can visit is a cave called Smuggler's Basin. In it you will fight against optional boss called Gutworm the Man-Eater. This creature's difficulty is strongly based upon characters that you are playing. If you are playing as a melee caster, range caster, this means that your chances of defeating him are higher compared to those who are relying on melee auto attacks. This is mostly connected with his high damaging physical attacks, plus he has a strong bleeding damage debuff, which significantly reduces your movement and attack speed at the same time. Taking all of this into account, I do not think it is worth it to kill him earlier, especially if your hero is forced to get the job done in point-blank range. With a caster you can kite him, but do keep in mind that he has a stun ability that can hit you from a distance. The best option for you is to clear this area later, when your character is going to be stronger, preferably after killing Warden Creek. The third optional area that I will highlight is going to be divided into 4 parts. I am talking about Hidden Path questline. Entrance to first part could be found closer to Devil's Crossing. You can enter this area when you will have a dynamite with you to open up a passage. It can be crafted in Homestead. Can you clear this first part early? The answer is yes. You just have to have good poison and acid plus pierce resistance. One tip that I will give you against boss of this place: get rid of his quote-unquote minions first, before attacking him. Short version: clear this zone as soon as you get the dynamite. Second part of the Hidden Path questline can be completed in the Broken Hills territory. The area in which you are forced to quote-unquote operate is very small. Luckily, minions there do not hit you pretty hard, with the exception of the boss. Guardian of Soleil is no joke, especially if you want to do second part right after the first one. The problem is that at this stage you do not have a decent health pool, as well as defense against chaos and vitality damage. And he deals a lot of it. Some of his attacks you cannot dodge. I am talking about red lightning from the sky, aka Doom Bolt. He is also capable of creating a torrent of red lightning in an arc wave that deals combined physical, chaos and vitality damage. Additionally, he creates blue circles on the ground that deals more damage the longer you stay on them. Combine this with the fact that he is capable of doing regular auto attacks in between his abilities, and he is definitely going to become a quote-unquote tough nut to crack. My advice for you is to fight him only if you are confident in your defense, plus your ability to dodge his skills, with the exception of his Doom Bolt. Otherwise, return to this place later, right after unlocking 4th icon waypoint. Third part of the Hidden Path questline has the same level of difficulty as first part, unless you are taking into account optional boss Mad Queen Rashalga, which you can find in the secret area, but I am not going to discuss her in this video. The boss in this zone is not that hard to deal with. He has a surprise for casters in the form of a teleport. However, he does not require from you to have a specific amount of defensive parameters to succeed. As soon as you kill him, you will be awarded with extra attribute point, and you can safely do this part right after you have completed previous task. The final segment of the Hidden Path questline can be safely completed right after you have finished the third part. The parts of the area in which you are going to fight is going to deal certain environmental damage to your hero, such as poison and acid, vitality, chaos, etc. Luckily, if you have at least 16% resistances or more, you should not experience huge problems from it. The boss of this place is tough yet fair. He demands from you to have a good character movement skills plus some map awareness, but all of his abilities can be dodged or baited. Completing this part will grant you extra skill point. Now let's talk about tips and tricks that can upgrade your gameplay with quote-unquote squishy caster. First of all, I should mention that in this game you can play as a tanky melee caster that has a high damage absorption, damage reduction plus very good physical resistance. For instance, Death Knight with spamming Force Wave. However, I am going to analyze more squishier version of the same archetype. Allow me to elaborate on some of the gameplay aspects of a Conjurer combination between Shaman and Occultist. Let's start with enumerating his general weaknesses first. This character has very low physical resistance, which means that you will practically quote-unquote feel every attack that you could not dodge. And you will see huge chunks of your health disappearing in a blink of an eye. The next thing that this hero is lacking is good damage absorption ability. I am aware that Possession, an exclusive skill of Occultist, gives 15% damage absorption, but compared to Death Knight abilities, this is lackluster. This by default means that every melee attack, especially critical attacks from heavy hitting monsters and bosses, is going to immediately force you to play defensively through kiting, running, healing, etc. This might look intimidating when you factor in the thing that most of the attacks you cannot avoid, and there will be a point where you might take those hits in. In order for you to survive, this character has advantages which compensate his weaknesses to a certain degree. First and foremost, the longer the fight goes, the more damage you will deal to your foes by stacking higher numbers of totems. There was a lot of cases where he was out-damaging Death Knight quite hard in a prolonged fight, especially against bosses. The second advantage is actually working in combination with first one. More abilities and totems you're going to use, more healing you will going to receive with the help of attack damage conversion to life. At the later stages of the game you can survive even in the most dire situations. I genuinely underestimated his healing potential that literally saved my life during this gameplay segment which you are currently seeing on your screen. Initially, I was considering that this unpleasant surprise is going to mean the end of my journey, but then I saw how my life regenerated with the help of my spells. Short version: outstanding healing from skills, which works tremendously and serves as a critical advantage. As long as you hit monsters with your skills, you will heal from them. Now I will mention specific things that can improve your game when playing those sort of characters. First and foremost, when playing as this archetype, you should always avoid going headfirst into the fray. In the majority of cases, before engaging in any fight, you should always try to utilize crowd control abilities that will either reduce monsters' movement speed, attack speed, casting speed, plus it might diminish their defensive parameters as well. In my example, I am always using Curse of Frailty to achieve this goal. Many of those skills usually have the good area of effect, plus high uptime, which makes them a perfect candidate for activating procs from your constellations. For example, Wendigo Mark, that gives flat vitality damage and attack damage conversion to life. The exception from this rule, about which I will talk later, will be connected with quote-unquote preparing your ground for the upcoming battle. With that said, controlling your foes will not kill them, and there will be a point when some of them will reach you or even surround your hero. This is why it's time to move on the next point in your battle sequence. When monsters are debuffed, it is time to go for your most damaging offensive skills. Every character has it, some have one, others more. Conjurer, for example, has to utilize a combination of several abilities in a short time span to achieve maximum damage output, i.e. Wendigo Totem with Corrupted Storm Totem, plus Bloody Pox and Sigil of Consumption ability that I currently do not have. There are damaging skills that will allow you to move as soon as you cast them. Others might force you to stick to one place or closer to it. Characters like Conjurer is actually a hybrid between two worlds. You have to constantly play around your totem setup, since they have a limited attack range and you cannot spam them, which means you need to get monsters closer to them and at the same time kite your enemies near them without getting surrounded in the process. The downside of this trick is that from time to time you might need to reposition your character, either to chase your foes or run around from them. This will lead to a damage and healing loss because you need to recreate your setup from scratch. For most monsters, using your most powerful attacks against them are going to grant you victory over them. But there are some of them that requires from you to apply additional techniques. Nemesis bosses, bosses in roguelike dungeons, egg bosses and some tough heavy-hitting opponents most definitely are a challenging test for casters, let alone squishy ones. They are capable of dishing out tons of damage in a short amount of time. On top of it, they have a high resistance which you need to lower if you want to retaliate with maximum efficiency. To do this, you should utilize damage immunity, mitigation or reduction skills, plus resistance reduction abilities in between your most damaging attacks. I was using Bloody Pox for offensive ability reduction and Devouring Swarm for lowering defense against vitality damage. One thing that you should keep track of is whether or not your debuffs need to be reapplied during battle. Some of them has a special symbol that will appear right on top of the enemy's name. I personally rely not only on my eyes, but also on a mod called Grim Internals that allows you to turn on a function that displays a debuff on elites or bosses and disappears from them when effect from those abilities has ended. With that said, let's talk about an exception from this battle sequence that I had mentioned earlier. You might change your approach to battle whenever you will encounter desecrated shrines or just spotted a boss or elite. Instead of using crowd control ability, my advice for you is preemptively stack your damaging abilities that requires a certain amount of time to appear before pulling those foes to you. A good example for this situation is Shaman ability called Wind Devil. You can create 2 of them in advance of incoming fight, which will make things easier for you. Now it's time to move to a conclusion. Keep in mind that with the exception of damage immunity skills, all of the previously mentioned tips you should be doing while kiting your enemies. As a squishy caster, your ability to move on the battlefield in a clutch situation is a skill that you will either acquire through practice and experience, or you will fail if you try to play as this archetype with the same fashion like a sword and board warlord or a death knight. Even now I cannot say that I have perfected movement aspect, but in one thing I am certain. Those types of characters does not forgive many mistakes. However, if you will dedicate enough time and effort, you will most certainly get satisfaction from every encounter that you had completed and every fight that you was able to win. I'm not trying to discourage you from visiting certain optional places or playing with more challenging heroes. It is the opposite of this. Go for it. Experiment with different builds. Use your own playstyle during battles. Visit those mentioned places whenever you feel like it. Because now you know what awaits you behind certain doors, as well as what is required from you if you want to play in the most efficient way as possible with a unique character archetype. Once again, this is my subjective opinion, and I do not insist that only my way is right. If you watched until the end, then my goal has been completed. To inform all of you about those things and share my opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. On that note, I would like to thank anyone for watching this video. Leave a like, share it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy this content and want to see more of it. Also, consider supporting us directly via our Patreon page, where you will be awarded with different perks and bonuses, depending on the amount you have pledged. Your help is always appreciated and motivates us to create more videos and improve visual, audio, and special effect aspects. With that said, I will see you all in the next videos. Take care.